All right, you crazy people out there. I hope you're doing okay. And sitting here, got a little setup here. Give me a minute to adjust. Testing, 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 testing. And we're going to have to do it that way. If you have a little echo, let me know. Let me try something else. Hello? Okay, that might help. All right, guys. Sorry for that inconvenience there for you guys watching on the rerun, but hopefully we have all the sound issues fixed and stuff because I got a little fancy and want to show off a little some books. Now, rarely do I really do negative reviews. I think I'm pretty balanced. Probably do a lot of stuff where I'm like, check this out, it's a hidden gem, or give it a second chance, or maybe I'll get in there and dive into something that, it's just a comic book. Nothing, they're not writing, they're not trying to write War and Peace or anything like that, or the next Watchmen. But in a minute here, I'm going to be talking about Halo Jones by Alan Moore. Hey, what's going on, Dr. Silver Age? But anyway, I decided to do this on a Saturday morning. We are here on March 26, 2022. It is 10:55 in the AM. And I was going to go out and do a few things today, but we have some crappy, wet, snowy weather outside. I've been out twice already. I'm like, it is not worth it. So we're going to work on the comic book room today. If I scanned around here, you'd be really surprised on just how bad this room is. I got 3 short boxes about a month ago, started messing around. And once you start doing anything in a comic book room, when you have a substantial amount of comics, it just blows it up. Okay. So, yeah, I think I'll do that, man. I got boxes stacked around, comics stacked around, and ran into another little haul in my travels with work today, which I want to show off. But the biggest thing is that I want to talk about this American Splendor for just a minute. Last night, Jared Osborne had the Cavern of Chaos show on his channel. You might as well subscribe to him and do it there. Friday nights are not usually good for me, 9 times out of 10. And I think I popped up about an hour into the show and had a good time and kind of talked about a few things that I'm going to kind of repeat here. But I get to take my time and get all my thoughts out and stuff, right? So we can keep this shaky cam from going, right? So, but basically, what happened is that for years, if you watch this channel, you know I'm an Alan Moore guy. I have talked about all sorts of things that he has written that are just fantastic and they're good. Kind of defended a few things a little bit, not change anybody's mind, just sort of give my idea on what he was doing, like Alan Moore's Providence and things like that. So I have really talked positively about Alan Moore for a long time and stuff, right? But we're going to be getting to a book that I'm just telling you, save your money. I showed the 2 books that my wife got me off of Amazon for $10 a piece. There are 3 books. This was originally going to be a 9-book deal, but Alan Moore in 2000 AD ended up ruffling each other's feathers, so it didn't happen. But I'm real careful because there are people who watch this who I will just show off these books that I get and talk about them, and then I'll get a message or they'll be in the comments telling me I checked that out. While I want to stop that on this book, it's not worth it, right? But what was so funny about what I'm about before I get to that is that this American Splendor, Harvey P. Carr started this American Splendor, I think in 1977, whole other century. Isn't that wild? And he put out about 1 a year, and it was all about life has enough drama. Life is complicated. So he did the slice of life books, had Robert Crumb on there, a great alternative, underground, indie, whatever you want to put it, comic that he put out. Didn't make a lot of bank, probably until they did a movie. He ended up on David Letterman. Harvey P. Carr, right? And I talked a little bit on Cavern of Chaos, my journey with Harvey P. Carr, when I found him, how I kind of knew him and stuff, right? But I have an issue that I'm not going to dig out of American Splendor from 1990. And on the cover, man, he is wearing, he's dressed like Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. He's got that green army jacket on that everybody wore during the 70s and all the hippies and stuff were wearing and stuff like that. And he's standing in looks like an alleyway, and there's like a old mattress that's beat up around there. There's a dog in a cage. He's surrounded by dog shit and all this stuff like that. And he's talking about, hey, I want to make an impact. I'm not going to give anybody a break. And there's like a whole speech on the cover, man. And he's still like cutting edge and rebellious and holding on to those 60s values and stuff and everything, right? And then you pop up to, ironically, where he ends up with a real deal at DC, one of the big two under the Vertigo line. And he's writing a couple of stories, and he gets some great artists. Not saying he didn't have great artists to begin with, but he's got like Richard Corbin in this and Eddie Campbell and everything, right? So it went from him being real philosophical and talking about storming against the man or raging against the machine or whatever, whatever he was doing, his jazz records and stuff, to where when I popped this open, I was like, getting old is going to be hard because in this book, it's the first story I read. I quit reading. I think I had these in trade or something. I don't know. But anyway, I found this for like 50 cents or something. So I got in there, and as you can see from the cover, if you're looking real close, is that he talks about his bar mitzvah when he was 13, and you're supposed to say, I am now a man or something, and he didn't do it. So the first couple of issues is him spending 2 days trying to unclog this toilet and having no idea what he's doing, but he feels like men are supposed to do that. So it's him just going back and forth and laying in bed and then getting in front of the toilet and yelling, I am a man. Finally, he didn't do it at his bar mitzvah at 13, but a guy that's probably in his 60s by now feels like a man. And I was just sort of like, man, he stayed true to what's going on. He's pulling from life and everything, but I'm just sort of like, is this what we have to look forward to as we get older? And I'm just going to tell you, no, let's learn from this. Okay, let's learn from this. Oh man, the Gray Man is here, and Gray Man, you may be able to help. If I remember right, and excuse me if I get this wrong, I believe you are over there across the pond in Great Britain. So maybe if you were collecting comics back in the 80s and 2000 AD, maybe you can explain to me the phenomenon of Halo Jones, because I'm really wanting to make sure that people don't buy this, seeing how what I've read in these 2 volumes here. And like I said, I'm pretty balanced. I've reviewed and taken up for a lot of Alan Moore stuff, but I just can't do it with this, right? So right here we have the Ballad of Halo Jones. And I want to say this is from like 83 and 84 or something like that, back in 2000 AD. And in this first book here, there's an editorial by Alan Moore where he's sort of explaining the idea of Halo Jones came from the fact that when you read 2000 AD, it was full of big gun-toting guys and stuff. Judge Dredd, Strodium Dog, whatever else they had in there, the Nemesis story. I have a few 2000 AD and a few reprints and stuff that came over here from Eagle and Quality in the 80s, and then Dan Dare and all that great stuff, Quench. You guys out there that are read this stuff could get your there and stuff, right? So for years, I've heard about the unfinished masterpiece that Alan Moore had, as he was hitting big with V for Vendetta and Watchmen and his Swamp Thing work and Killing Joke, and then all the drama amongst that came out where he didn't work for DC, and then all of a sudden we get like From Hell and Lost Girls, then we get the ABC line, Tom Strong, Promethea, Tomorrow's Stories, Top 10, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, then we get the movies and Alan Moore making more news and bouncing around and all the drama with him, and then doing them trying to offer him a job doing the Before Watchmen books, and he's not going to do them, so they keep doing them. Then we get Doomsday Clock, and then we have this horrible Rorschach 12-issue miniseries. Whatever. We can go on and on, right? But over the years, it was like I kept hearing about this Halo Jones, this beloved Halo Jones, this well-reviewed Halo Jones. She wasn't anyone special. She was just a person. And maybe it got overhyped, but I don't think so, right? But I want to have a few thoughts on this, right? But when you open it up, it has these reviews all ready to go, right? Multiversity Comics, still ahead of the pack. It remains a work of powerful emotional impact. Multiversity Comics, radical and progressive. Women write about comics. War, romance, hope, and feminism. Relatable and arresting. Doom Rocket. Revolutionary, Mook Chick. Halo Jones was my first love, or maybe my first role model. The girl that got it, Lauren Bukes. The story of an ordinary woman, not a superhero or a special snowflake, but a woman who made her own story, a character that represented the every woman. The Ballad of Halo Jones broke the mold, remarkably timeless, independent, groundbreaking feminist heroine, one of the comic industry's strongest role models, The Guardian. Exponentially cooler than knockoffs like Tank Girl. And I thought that was a bold statement there because, yeah, Tank Girl in the 90s was something, maybe not so much in the later years, mostly because she remains a fed up real person amid the wild space opera of the universe. And I know there's somewhere in here where I was reading about Alan Moore talking about he actually got to, Neil Gaiman got to set, Neil Gaiman was a fan of this. And he said that supposedly he got to sit down with Alan Moore and talk about Halo Jones. And he said that Alan Moore graciously walked him through the 9 books. Only 3 books came out. This was a 5-page serial in 2000 AD. But he said that as Alan Moore revealed to him what his plans for Halo Jones was, he was in tears when it was over. So I'm like, this is pretty bold. This is a bold statement. This is something. So I read this, and absolutely nothing happens. This book actually made me angry because I could have been reading something else. I could have been doing something else. I could have been shaving. I could have been brushing my teeth. I could have been doing anything. Because hey, so after, and I'll walk through some of this in a minute, but after I like read that book, the first book, and I struggled, I got online and I'm like, what am I missing? Is this a joke? I'm thinking this is some kind of joke and I'm just not in it. It's like everybody's praising Halo Jones, but it's like with a wink and a nudge. You know what I mean? Like you got to be on the end to understand what's going on. And I found reviews in YouTube videos and stuff, and people being like, "Oh boy, she wanted to do stuff and she did everything. Whoa, boy, did she!" and stuff. And I'm like, "Are we reading the same shit? Are we reading the same shit?" You know, Halo Jones does absolutely nothing. We get false starts. We get things that maybe I was reading into, trying to make sense of what we're doing. Maybe he was going to call back to the stuff that he set up in the first book. No, he didn't. Okay. All right. And man, I'm open minded. Okay. You know what I'm saying? This is not going to be like a debate or I'm going to come after anybody, man. If you got some nice things to say to Halo Jones, maybe you can turn me around, right? We have Gray Man here. It's a slow burn. Maybe I do think, maybe I do think it's plottist, maybe overinflate its merits. Okay. Yeah. I know I butchered that, but my screen is very tiny for some reason today. So anyway, so as I was reading this, we got world building. So basically, in the first issue, we get to know the Loop. For some reason, she lives in an underground uh, community where I thought we were getting some social commentary or something because nobody can work, nobody has a job, and even the things that you need to do, like go shopping, uh, you have to prepare yourself like you're in a Mad Max movie, almost dystopian and stuff, right? And she's 18 and wants to get out. She's hanging out with her friends, and they have mechanical jobs, and you're just walking around seeing these characters in this world in here. And of course, it is colorized in here, so you think it's going somewhere. And one of her friends is murdered, uh, but she gets a job on a cruise ship, a space cruise ship, if you will, and she escapes, and it has dolphins, right? And now, right here, when I saw the dolphin, which goes nowhere, she just thought it was pretty, and she apparently could talk to it. I was sitting here like, is this Alan Moore trying to do Douglas Adams? Is that? I mean, it's the early '80s, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm like, is that what we're doing here? So this immediately started feeling like a poor man's Douglas Adams book to me because it even had dolphins. If you've read Douglas Adams, you know the dolphin reference I'm pertaining to. I'm like, that cannot be a coincidence. And Halo Jones is vanilla. There is nothing about her. There's no personality about her. Everything happens around her. She's not really partaking or solving any problems or doing anything. There's no plot going forward. You think something's going to happen, like her walking into her room and there's a gun to her head, and nothing goes anywhere. And you got this angry robotic dog. But you see this world and it goes nowhere. Now, I'm not going to really comment on the art too much. Oh, I'm in book 2. Well, what do you know? But it doesn't make a difference, okay? Because nothing really happens in the second book. But here's the first volume. And right here off the bat, one of the first comics up there with Watchmen, V for Vendetta, Dark Knight, the things that we talk about when we talk about comics, Halo Jones should have been one of them, Neil Gaiman. I was like, and I'm not going to do all the reviews, but it goes on like this is just right up there with all that stuff. But anyway, you're going to notice that I was in the second book and really couldn't tell a difference because it's all the same stuff. It's just her looking around, things going on around her, weird people that have nothing to do with her walking around talking about this is your fate if you stay here. You become one of these, whatever these things are. And these aliens are on there. And I guess this was like social commentary on immigration, but that's what happened. I started really trying to defend this book in my head, thinking everything means something, and it's not. So I can go through here and show you the plastic artwork of Ian Gibson. And I don't want to down his work because he's able to tell a story. So the artwork was a little bit off-putting, but nothing really happens. She just gets on there. One of her friends is murdered. She gets a job. She's on there. And then in the second book, it's just her running around. Nothing happens. She doesn't even solve the murder of her friend. I'm going to spoil it for you. Okay. But basically that mechanical dog, about every 6 months, apparently they change out the memory discs that are in his head. And the captain of the ship that she's working on is like, I figure you might be homesick. So I've sent you the memory disc from the mechanical dog. And it recorded him murdering his master. So it comes to try to get her. And then there was one interesting character, and I tried reading social commentary into it as well. Okay, and this character was actually interesting, but it's a character named Glyph, I believe. And in the future, apparently, you have the option of getting into a machine and remaking yourself if you're not happy with yourself. And Glyph cannot remember if Glyph started out as a female or a male, and it's changed. It changed itself. Decided it wanted to go back to normal. It didn't happen, and it ended up doing it like 47 times. Now it's a non-being, and it's so ordinary and nothing stands out with it that it's non-existence. As you're talking to her, you lose focus on her. She bores you to death, and you just go on, and everybody ignores her. She ends up saving the day, but she's non-existent, so she goes on. So I'm done. There's one more book, and I'm done, and this drove me nuts, right? So I was wondering what was the point of the book. It feels like there is no point. So I started coming up with all sorts of theories and stuff, right? I'm sort of like, this was a breather. This was Alan Moore on purpose doing something completely opposite that what was in 2000 AD to get attention. Then I'm sitting here thinking, this is the kind of character that people can project on. Halo Jones comes off as shallow. She doesn't do anything. You don't know anything about her personality. She's not a fleshed out character. So I'm like, can people project on her? They look at her and they just see a girl. So are people shaping that character in their mind? I don't know. But what amazed me is that there is a lot of hype about it, and a lot of people who say that they are fans of the book. And I'm really wondering if they ever really read it. Is it a book where it's Alan Moore? So we must like Alan Moore, and since Halo Jones is a little different, you get to act like you're in an in crowd or something. Maybe it's very middle school. You talk that like Halo Jones, but have you ever really read it? And then I'm just like, people project a lot of stuff. She does absolutely nothing. There's even a chapter where it's 14,000 years in the future, and it's a class at a college, 14,000 years in the future of this future. And they're talking about how Halo Jones was fantastic. Well, we don't get shown anything. We don't get told why she's fantastic. It's just like we're saying the words, thus that's going to be reality, which is ridiculous. They never show anything about why Halo Jones is being taught in a class 14,000 years in the future. So my mind started saying, Tim, it's not a complete story. There's 6 books that did not get complete. And no, it does not stand up on its own. You force yourself to finish the book. So I want to make clear, just because I popped up and said I was excited about it, anybody that watched that live stream and stuff where I'm like, I can't wait to break into this, do not buy this book. Okay, on my recommendation, don't do it. It is not on me. And I heard there's another printing coming out. And I'm just like, who's the audience for this? Now, here's what got me. The book almost broke me emotionally or mentally or my patience or whatever, because as I was like doing the research, trying to figure out what am I missing on this book? Why is this book so popular? That I found out that there's a band Wendy James, and I have not heard about the band since high school. I know Wendy James is still out there. I follow her on Facebook. She's doing solo stuff. But there was a band called Transvision Vamp, and she wrote a song called "Hanging Out with Halo Jones." And I'm like, what is this phenomenon of nothing? Alan Moore has done much better works. I mean, if you left a taboo as it is with Lost Girls, when you compare Halo Jones to his work with Lost Girls, it's like Lost Girls turns into literature. You know, I'm like, but it just drove me nuts. So there's my Halo Jones rant. I could go on and on, but I feel like there's some projection going on there, or people were. So here's one of the reviews I saw. Right, that was defending the book. It said that Halo Jones felt real because she has real friends that are female and they went shopping. And I'm like, I wanted to reply, but it was a 10-year-old, little review, a little blurb. And I'm like, when they went shopping, they were dreading it because they were acting like it was going to be Mad Max world. Yet they don't show it. They say it. You see them dreading it. You hear about them, taking shopping to like some kind of like Thunderdome event, but you never see it. Okay, so I don't know. It had so many false starts. It felt like it could have been social commentary, but it wasn't. It had a little bit of a murder mystery. It didn't go anywhere. She didn't even solve the murder. I saw one review where they were talking about like it was like Forrest Gump before Forrest Gump. And no, it's not Forrest Gump before there. She's not even that interesting or that involved in stuff, right? Everything is happening around her, if you can call anything happening at all. It had 5 rats, all right, that were in like the suite, and it was a king. And actually, the 5 rats connect their tail, and they make one mind. And one of the rats was dying, and Halo Jones was being a little snoopy, so she walked in, and they begged her to find another rat. Well, she didn't find a rat. Glyph found the rat, and then she took it, ignored Glyph, real shallow like, and gave them the rat and took credit. And I'm like, this is not a great character at all. This is the origin of a supervillain in the makings. So I don't know what people are seeing. I don't know what they're projecting on this character. I don't know what they're doing, but it's all false. I don't see it, man. Okay, so Gray Man, I'm gonna I'm going. I said it, guys. Like, give it to me, man, because it sounds like he's a little excited. All right. He read the story every week in 2000 AD, I guess is what he's saying when it came out. It's a slow burn. Maybe I don't. Yeah, I read this. Okay. She's bored on Earth, goes into space, ends up in a war on an alien planet. Yes, it was all in color. So I'm guessing the war is in issue 3. Oh my God. Okay. Looks like you barely into the story in the second volume. Yeah, I picked up the wrong book, but they all look the same to me in that, where nothing really happens. Ian Gibson, the artist, cool. I've read both volumes. I've forced myself through that second one. Different drummer. That's political commentary right there. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just not picking up. Yeah. Poor old Glyph saves the day, gets offed, and isn't even noticed. See, I want the story of Glyph. That was the interesting character. Who I wanted the mystery of who is Glyph. I mean, maybe it's saying something that we don't find out. I don't know. I thought it was okay back in the day, but not a favorite of mine. There's just people that have written songs about it and still defend the book. All right, sorry if he's left, so sorry about that, man. I shit on a English book, and I'm just being honest here, man. So anyway, moving on. So what we have here is in my travels this month, and I'm trying not to read into it. I'm hoping I've just hit a very cool, backwards into some nice books. But last week when I did my live show, I showed you how I traveled for work and found a place where I found dollar bins, and if you bought 20 books, the price dropped to 50 cents a piece. Well, again, I traveled for work and I was looking for a place to eat and saw this indoor flea market at this little honey pot. And I walk in and the books are all 25 and 50 cents a piece. It's three little short boxes in this indoor flea market. And as I went through there and picked out some of these books, and I put some back because they were still just in bad shape, even though they were 25 to 50 cents. The guy came up to me and he was like, I'll sell you a whole box for $25. I thought about it and I was like, well, let me go through the books and see what I want. He's like, I don't want you to go through and take out all the good stuff and put in one box. I don't know anything about these comics. And I didn't say anything. So I was like, no, no. Then he hit me up and said, I'll sell you three boxes for $50. And I was like, no, 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 I'm good. I'll just take what I got here. And I ended up getting $8 worth of stuff, right? Wasn't that that, these were very common books, and nothing really outstanding, just cool reads, if you will, right? So I found this, and now I have to find part one. Okay, but this came out in 1995. I actually had a comic book shop in the town I lived in that was around for 1 year. And the only thing I can figure out as to why I missed this is that this must have came out right when his shop shut down, right? But Dark Horse put out a 2-part miniseries of The Shadow meets Doc Savage. And it blows my mind because whenever I read a little bit more of Doc Savage in comic book form, the more I think back to that movie Buckaroo Banzai that I've loved since I was when it came out. I was 11. The more I see the Doc Savage influence on Buckaroo Banzai, if you will, right? Even with his team and everything, right? But this is just solid. If you want a Doc Savage and the Shadow story taking place, I guess, in the late 30s, maybe early 40s. I don't have part one. This is just a straightforward little crossover with them. A lot of fun, and I think anybody that's a fan of either of these characters will enjoy this. They actually have a 2-page spread where they finally go at it, fighting each other, and of course, it's got those very bad people from World War II, in it and stuff. And it felt like a little bit like a serial. This book, this one actually opens up with, I guess, the Hindenburg blowing up, which should tell me what year it is if I could remember my great disasters. Okay, but yeah, not bad at all for 1995. The blimp is blowing up, shadows jumping down. We see Doc Savage's bronze eyes there. And we'll just kind of go from there. Some good stuff. I think the art is solid. I think it's great storytelling, just straightforward, exactly what it should be. Okay, yeah. This was left over from the last one, but I really want to get the volume 1 of The Dreaming. This was the book that was sort of supposed to fill in the gap for Sandman when Neil Gaiman was about to end it. This book came out and started, I think, when Sandman was in the late 50s or 60s, and of course it ended with 75. And it has a rotating creative team with their story arcs and stuff, right? And I'm really amazed. I was way out of the book by the time this came up. I got the first 6 issues and decided not to keep the book, and I bought like issue 7, and then I haven't 7 or 8, and I haven't been around. But this is a Corinthian story in here, so I may have to look up and probably just fill in the gaps and get the Dreaming book. It has the Raven, the Corinthian, and if you know your Neil Gaiman's Sandman lore, that's very cool. Of course, we have monsters, in here. Shades of Game of You. I don't know if that's what they're pertaining to and stuff. So that was very cool. And what we got here? Can only pop in for a minute. Loved Buckaroo Banzai. So many birthday parties for a while that could we would rent the VHS. Absolutely. I think I'm gonna have to look and see if I'm pretty sure I have it on DVD or VHS. It's been so long. I have to look because I found a place where it's constantly streaming. Like I can just pull it up on the Roku whenever I want to. Right. So one of the things that I love about comics of the 90s, I do feel gets a bad rap. Now, when you were there in the 90s, there was such a glut. I mean, when Image happened, all the talent left, all these companies really popped up. And there were some from the 80s that were right there. And long story short, by 94, 95, possibly a little bit in 96, you had the potential to have over 800 books a month coming out if a comic book shop really bought everything that could be distributed. Okay. So there was a lot of glut out there and a lot of false starts and a lot of books that people had regret. People were also doing that thing. Seems like it happens every 10 years or something, and we're in the middle of it here now. Every 10 years where people come in and they want to use comic books as investments. And that probably started with the death of Superman in Image and other things. And then everybody just kind of abandoned it when they realized in 10 years, 20 years that it was not going to pay for their college tuition for their kids and they were not going to be able to buy a house and retire and stuff. So they abandoned it. And we had the bubble pop in the 90s. We had Marvel filing Chapter 11. We had Marvel farming out books to two studios at Image Comics and and all these other. And we had these great crossovers with other companies trying to get sales. Just, but material, but when you actually walked into the shop, there was a lot of good stuff out there that has risen to the top, or you can rediscover it now. I mean, there's tons of stuff. Now, granted, I'm saying it out loud. I totally get why people who were there during the 90s are a little bit disgusted, but I think a lot of them have buyer's regret. We had the James Robinson Starman. We had Kingdom Come, The Rise of Alan Moore, Marvels. 1992, we still had the great thing that was Image that inspired a lot of this stuff, right? The first appearance of Hellboy. A lot of great stuff did happen in the 90s. If you had recovered from Chris Claremont leaving the X-Men after 17 years and they had gutted everything that he had built over 17 years with it, the teams, the people that I don't know, I heard the book was hijacked from him, he was pushed out, who knows, right? But when he left the book, what he built 17 years building up, they had gutted within 2 or 3 years, and there was nothing there, and they came up with the Age of Apocalypse, and it had a lot of influences from video games and manga style and stuff with Cruz and Campbell and all these guys coming on, if I remember the names right and stuff, right? So yeah, if you were there, that could have been exciting. Image had everybody really was trying to be the next Image and draw like the superstar artists and stuff, and very bad weird things happen to the Avengers that nobody talks about anymore, right? So yeah, you have to dig, but it was there. And one of the books that I wanted to get a hold of is this Bravura line, Bravura, that came out through Malibu. Now, unless you were there, Image started out at Malibu and then they left. And then Malibu came out the Ultraverse and this line of creator-owned comics and stuff, right? And let's see if they got an advertisement. They might have an advertisement. But Dan Brereton is a painter and artist. I think he'd been around for a couple of years when this came out. And he came up with his own creator-owned book called The Nocturnals. And the best way to explain this book, and an omnibus has come out where it's collected all of his Nocturnals work. But this is what I think is the first miniseries. I got to do a little digging and make sure. But basically, it's a world where it's Halloween 12 months a year, and the characters reflect that. It's painted exactly like it is here on the cover, painted throughout. I love Dan Brereton's style. I have Giant Killer, a miniseries by him that's basically a character who looks like a demon, and he fights kaiju in Japan. He has with Howard Chaykin, he has one of my favorite Batman stories, Thrill Killer, where it's an alternate world, where it's in that early 60s era before Kennedy was shot, with the beatniks and jazz and the Rat Pack and stuff, right? Things like that. A story set in that era. But we have things like a character that I can't believe didn't take off more. He's on the cover here in a minute, but we have the Gun Witch. And I feel like the Gun Witch highly influenced Batman Beyond with this a character in the Joker gang who dressed up like pretty much a scarecrow and carried a jack-o'-lantern around like he's getting candy on Halloween. But even if the story is kind of weak, I thoroughly enjoy Dan Brereton's artwork. His stuff is very pulpy, and it feels like it's in that I feel like it's in that 60s era horror, maybe into the 70s with like creepy covers, eerie covers, that sort of thing. But he just amazes me how he understands the color palette of an era so well to where this feels like it was transported out of something from the late 60s. I'm waiting for like the Rat Fink boxes and that kind of art and stuff. So I got all 6 issues of this. I mean, look at this. I mean, if you, like I said, I can't say too much about the story, but the artwork, the absolute artwork. I mean, we have basically, I think he's just using 3 tones of the same color on this cover, which I think is fantastic. Yeah, and we go this way. Here we go. I mean, if you really slow down and look at his artwork, it's just dark and fantastic. And the longer you look at it, the better it gets. Now, this is the character that I think was hot for a little while. I want to do a video on the good girl era, bad girl, good girl era of the 90s. And I think this is the character right here. I think she's supposed to be just a ghost or something. I don't know. But anyway, she's the one I think was pretty popular for half a beat. And where's number 6? There we go. Number 6, we have the Gun Witch right on the cover. And that's a character that I find very striking. I really like this cowboy witch look, mixed in there. Just fantastic artwork, even if the story is going to be weak. Okay. So then I picked this up. And what I need to say is that to tell if they're 50 cents or a quarter, if they came raw, no bag and board, they were a quarter. So these were a quarter a piece. Now, a couple years ago, I found another volume of Nocturnals, The Trade, and I found it in an antique shop or something for $1. And I think I've gotten rid of it and stuff. But what was so funny is when I was showing it off online, Dan Brereton showed up. The artist showed up in the thread. And I had made the comment that I always wanted to read Nocturnals, but it wasn't at my comic book shop. And I was meaning way back when it came out, when that comic book shop we had probably sold. It's probably when they closed down. That's what's wild about finding this era of books here, right? But he wanted to know why I wasn't able to find it in a comic book shop. And I did not have the heart to tell him, if he hadn't already seen it, that I found his work for $1. And so I just told him, I was like, my comic book shop shut down. I mean, that's what happened. So anyway, now I was curious about this. Techno Comics didn't go very far. I used to know the background and history behind this, but like I said, this was when in the 90s, everybody decided to start putting out comic books. Okay. So Techno Comics was interesting because they would bill these books as Neil Gaiman's Lady Justice, Neil Gaiman's Mr. Hero, a steampunk book or something, right? Leonard Nimoy with his Prime Mortals. And what it was is that these were concepts created by these creators. They were not on the book. So this is another Dan Brereton covers. That's why I got this. Neil Gaiman did not write this, and I haven't read it yet. But the thing about it is that this has a rotating cast of rotating creative teams. And basically you put on, from what I understand, you put on this blindfold, and the spirit of Lady Justice, or whoever she is, will take you over, and you will go out and exact justice or revenge on somebody, right? I'll be honest with you, I really don't know if I'm going to read these, because I flipped through them and they're very painful to look at with what I'm seeing. Trying to see where it shows her talking to her. But anyway, apparently this lady is in a wheelchair. She puts on the mask, or not even a mask, but the handkerchief, and then the spirit. Now, years later, Promethea would come out, and this gave me shades of Alan Moore's Promethea. Anybody can be Promethea if they use their imagination and luck, and tap into her power. And apparently Lady Justice may be the same way, and it's a few years before. So the first 3 issues are one story. These are all mixed up. So the first 3 issues, that's one story. And then the 4th issue starts a new arc with a new lady being Lady Justice, right? Techno Comics didn't last long. They do have a book called iBots that was based on Isaac Asimov's iRobot work, and George Perez did those. So I'm collecting those. Here's a cool pinup on the back of one of these issues. So it was like the 90s. So this is what I'm talking about. I totally get the glut. Now, this was quite the find for what I paid for it. 50 cents. And it's not that big a deal, but I mean, it's the first appearance of Speedball and it's got a John Romita. It's a Ron Friends and a John Romita cover. John Romita inked it. But we have John Romita back on Daredevil and Spider-Man, no matter what. That's kind of cool. And we get a Steve Ditko creation of Speedball that came out, first appearance. I have two of these, and I missed this on the rack when it came out because I kind of thought he looked ridiculous. I'm just fresh off. What was it? This came out in '88. This is the year that I discovered Watchmen and read Watchmen for the first time, at 15 years old. So I didn't have time for any kind of, fun book. So, okay. Rorschach got in my head at this time, very impressionable age. So in the year that I discovered Rorschach and the comedian and all this Alan Moore Watchmen stuff, Speedball comes out. So a couple years later, I finally I missed out on a lot of good stuff and I wanted to get it. Well, I bought a copy, and when I opened up the book, I didn't look at it before I bought it. It was water damaged. I found another one in a dollar box and it was all scruffed up. So after all these years, I finally get one for 50 cents. And the only thing wrong with it, and I'm hoping I didn't do it, is that it's got one little break here, one little tick. And I got a feeling it's where it was on the spinner rack. And if you remember the spinner racks, people would run their fingers and pull the book down to see what's behind it. So we got a first appearance of Speedball. Much more appreciative of characters that make comic book universes more interesting. A variety is what we need, a variety of heroes. A diversity of ideas, if you will. Okay. So yeah, that was kind of cool to find. Now this is interesting, right? I've talked about Jim Starlin's Breed before years ago. And there was 3 volumes that came out. But Breed is a Jim Starlin creation where there's a demon who they raid these towns with his demons, and they pillage and don't get consent and all kinds of other stuff on people. And then these children are born, and the military sweeps in and hides everything and covers this up. And the first one picks up in like World War II era, 1940s. And these children grow up and they're watched, and they're able to transform at a certain age they are the breed. They turn into demons with different animal traits, right? He has ram horns. There's one with a lion's head and all this stuff, right? But this guy is adopted by a colonel, and he grows up and ends up in Vietnam, and he blacks out. And that's how he got out of the military, because when he blacked out, he turned into a halfway between this demon form and his human form, kind of in between, and took out Charlie. Okay. But he doesn't remember it. And then it picks up in the 70s, and he's taking acid. At this point, I'm sitting here like, I think Jim Starlin is getting a little autobiographical here, because he decides to take acid, and he's walking around in his sandals in early 70s New York, and he thinks he's tripping, but he finds a portal. He goes through a door in an alleyway in an old abandoned building, and he's transported to this magical land called Elsewhere or something, right? And there's a lady waiting on him that's sort of his sister, and she's just all ugly and stuff. And she puts her hand in the water like Galadriel from Lord of the Rings, and she tells him his origin and how he's going to fight all this and stuff, right? So he trains for months and months and realizes it's not a trip. So first arc was more or less his origin and him getting trained and this world building and stuff. The second set of miniseries came out a year later. Now, what gets me is that it really blew my mind that Hellboy and the Breed came out at the same time. 2 books about demons taken in 2 separate different directions, right? So the second book comes out about a year later, probably around, I don't know, 94, 95, and I'm digging it. I'm loving it. The story continues. And then we have to wait, I want to say 17 years maybe, for Breed 3 to come out. And I totally missed it. I totally missed it. I waited and waited and waited, and for some reason, I'd order my comic books online. I didn't catch it. Maybe it was because it was the company of Image or something. So I found number 1, and now we have to get their other, I don't know, 5 issues or something. It's probably 6 or 7 issues now. These are all in trade, but I think they're out of print, right? But I just want to know how the trilogy ends, if you will, right? I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's kind of that thing that I want to compare to in the 80s, where I didn't have access to to Watchmen, because it was direct market only, and I got my stuff off the spinner racks and the drugstores and stuff, right? So my Watchmen was actually the Squadron Supreme by Mark Grunwald. Well, that's kind of what happened here with Breed. Instead of going with Hellboy, I checked out Hellboy here and there, but I ended up going with Breed. I honestly still felt it was more, I like the idea that it was 6-issue arcs, and I knew what was going to be happening, and it was an interesting story. I mean, don't get me wrong, I picked up some Hellboy, and I've made up for it over time, very much so, if you will. I had the first appearance of Hellboy. I have library editions and all sorts of stuff, Hellboy now and stuff, right? So who do we got out here? Oh, he's back. Thank you for coming back, Gray Man. I've moved on from Halo Jones, so that's awesome. Okay, so another thing that I have is the great thing about the 80s. Well, I'll sit here and put them in front of me, but the great thing about the 80s is that everybody was an underdog, and it was all about the little guy rising up and beating the bad guy. You know what I mean? If you go back in the 80s, it was all about the underdog. That's my impression, right? I mean, think Karate Kid, right? And then you had things where it was dystopian futures and post-apocalyptic. And I love my post-apocalyptic stuff, but I'm finding out they did it better back in the day, you know. But I love the post-apocalyptic stuff back there, man. I have little pulp novels by Andre Norton called Starman's Son. You know, you got Commandy, all kinds of books, the Mad Max movies. All the stuff was there. Ice Pirates even started tagging on to this stuff and everything. And then Tim Truman came out with a book called Scout. And I've met Tim Truman. I have probably like the first 6 issues of the original Scout miniseries, signed all by Tim Truman, and there's a couple volumes. Then we have Scout War Shaman, which I've never read, and this is we're up to like 1988, right? So this is Scout number. They're in the bag backwards. Number 7. Like I said, just me and my buddy Anderson. We're the only ones that I know that's into Scout. It's all about the Apache and a dystopian future. You know, good stuff, man. It'll be, and like I said, how can you go wrong for a quarter? You know, so these were a quarter a piece. And then this cracked me up, man. I want to take you back because it doesn't really matter, okay? But when Image came out in '92, they made news on headline news, CNN, anything. You know, it couldn't believe it. I was at a community college, and I was outside hanging out, and they had a game room in this college. You had to go through the cafeteria, and they had this little room that had a big TV, a pool table, and a jukebox, whatever, and some chairs and stuff. And it was a large screen TV back then, right? And they came and got me. They were like, Tim, you got to see this. So they take me, they come and get me. They won't tell me what it is. We go on there, and there on the news is the Image crew: Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson, Mark Silvestri, Will Spertatio, whatever, whoever I'm missing there, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, comics made the news, and they announced that they have left Marvel and they're going to be making, I mean, I saw it on the news at a community college. People got me. It was so surreal. So basically, in celebration of this, a couple years later, I have no idea what year this is. This is a 50-cent book now, but this Image Zero was supposed to be huge at the time if you were there from the get-go because you had to get coupons. Valiant Comics started a coupon thing, and I don't know who came first. I don't know who the chicken and the egg is, right? But to make comic book collectibles, the trick was you had to buy 2 because the comic book would decrease if you did not have the coupon inside. So you had to get several different Image comics that had the coupon, get all the coupons, send the coupons in, and then you would get this Image Zero. Okay. It's a few sketches by Todd McFarlane. It's a few little short stories by the rest of the crew. This is worthless, right? But I got it because the only way you could get it was through the mail. This supposedly never hit the stands. So here we are, 30 years later. Will be nice. Less than a few years shy of 30. I end up getting it for 50 cents. Okay. So Image Zero, guys, what everybody wanted because it had rare art from the original Image crew. You didn't miss anything, right? Okay. So these were cool because I never saw these. I never saw these when they came out. And I think I got these for 20 cents. There we go. These were 20 cents, right? But it still goes on. You get your comic news. I've got one here somewhere. You can still go in and you'll get some freebies at the comic book shop, you know, comic news, little previews, issues and stuff, right? And I'm assuming that this was free, but you could also get Inside Image. Image did their own little book to hype what was coming out, and they have little interviews and stuff in this. So I never saw these before, so I grabbed it. Now, what's very cool about this one is before I bought it, I flipped through, and it has a very short interview right to the point with Walt Simonson and somebody else, because Simonson is with Silvestre doing some stuff for Cyberforce. And going back to this Bravura line, that's what's so funny about this. They had left Malibu and went on their own, and Malibu started the new universe and this Bravura line, right? So, but in this all goes together in the 90s if you're into that kind of comic book history. But they're talking about Simonson, and the person interviewing him from Image that's interviewing him is sort of like, hey, I saw some sketches you were doing for some creator-owned stuff. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm working on some Star Slammer stuff. And the guy sort of hinting to him about like, could you make it a home at Image? He's like, hey, it's going to find a home, but I don't know yet. I'm still playing around. It may not be Image. It ended up being the Bravura line that Image had just left. Image did not get Walt Simonson's Star Slammers. He went with the company that Image left. For some reason, I think that's hilarious. I don't know why. Comic book collector humor, maybe, right? Anyway, so that was kind of cool to see a Walt Simonson interview and a few other things that were coming out. And then I saw this one, and we're going to go on another rant here, right? But there's certain things that came out that even even the guys that were into comics would sort of laugh, right? I found a what was, oh, I forgot it, man. But Wizard Toy Fair Theater or something like that, right? And I found the joke that was in this, like in 1994. Wizard magazine, when you used to get the magazine, and when it first came out, it had cards, comics, toys, a little bit of gaming in there, little video games and stuff. It was packed full of stuff. And then eventually, as they went on, they ended up having like little skits in there that they did, and they would make Mego figures and make a comic book with those Mego figures of, it was funny. Toy Fair Theater. In one of them, they had Thor and I guess Spider-Man and somebody else go to a comic book convention, and he's like, "Oh, look, it's Commandy," and even the little figure of the guy selling the Commandy books. On the long boxes that they had made, they put a little thing on there that was like Commandy just kept getting marked down because nobody wanted Commandy. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. Even that was cool about a collector and being with other collectors growing up and stuff. There was things you could have collected that were just way out there for everybody else, and collecting Commandy was like that. Well, another book that was sort of like that was this Deathmate. Valiant and Image did a big crossover, and I was down for it. I was totally down for it. And it had a prequel and an epilogue, and in the middle of all that, they had 4 books, 2 put out by Valiant. It was blue. They were not numbered; they were colored. I think you had blue and green from Valiant, and then you had red and black from Image. And they made this universe where they mixed the universes together. You had Valiant characters with Image characters and stuff, right? All because Doc Solar, just called Solar now, fell in love with Void from Wildcats, and just the immersion messed up the universe, right? So I had fun with the books, and they were fun. But there were people that were just sort of like, "Are you kidding me?" And it took forever for the second Image book to come out by Rob Liefeld, Deathmate Red, Youngblood and Bloodshot, and it took forever to come out. And I've got a couple of those. You can find these in dollar bins and stuff, right? So I was really cool to find this with some interviews to talk about it. And it made me realize that even though that was one of those books that people kind of rolled their eyes at and stuff when it came out, I had a good time with it because I was seeing Valiant characters. It was more for the Valiant characters. And nobody was trying to write Shakespeare. Nobody was trying to do The Watchmen. Nobody was trying to do, a proposal for a movie or a TV show. They just had fun. They were just fun comics. And I'm beginning to realize one of the reasons I think I harp a whole lot on modern comics, especially going back 7 years now, at least, I can almost put a number on it. It really started with DC 52. I can go on. It goes all the way back to when Bendis came on the Avengers and disassembled them. That's really where it started. But I digress. But I realized that there's a lot of stuff that could just be made for fun. There's a lot of fun missing from the books because people want to make statements and look virtuous and all the wrong reasons and stuff, right? And no creativity of making new characters. Everybody wants to keep them for themselves and maybe publish them elsewhere, and maybe they can get a TV show out of it and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that has sanitized a lot of the modern comics, and it's the big two when we talk about it. And people keep saying there's tons of great comics out there and stuff. It's just so sad that you really have to dig for them. It's sad. It's sad that it's really hard to find them. I bought 27 new comic books last year. 27. And I'm not saying all of them were winners, but I tried. And I've got a few things coming out that I was really excited to see, that when I get my next Gmart haul, I'll be real excited to see if these books are really good. Right. So anyway, Inside Image, the Deathmate crossover, Deathmate crossover with Valiant. This should be good. I can't wait to read that. And there's the Rob Liefeld cover that everybody was waiting on. This ended up being the cover for Deathmate Red. So everybody knew what it was going to look like, but it was super late. Super late. So there you go. Look, check that out. Yeah. But like I said, it was fun. I had a good time with it. I've collected almost everything I could. This was cool. The Malibu Sun. I have a interview with Jim Starlin. I can check out now. Again, this was a quarter, but I love this stuff here. This is stuff, I was reading Wizard comic scene as it came out and stuff. And then there's like stuff like this that, this is from 1994. He's probably talking about Breed. We got the Origin Month Breakthrough. That was the Ultraverse crossover they were having, where George Perez was front and center on some of that stuff. The Bravura line, Malibu Rocket. So this is basically, a book with Malibu about their projects and where they were trying to hit it all. They were hitting on all cylinders before Marvel bought them up. I double dipped with this because I thought it was Orion, where I was in a rush. I'm trying to get the Walt Simonson Orion series cleaned up, get all the issues and stuff. I put it off for years. So when I saw number 9 and I saw Orion, I looked on my app real quick to see if I needed it. I just looked at the numbers, and it turns out it's Jack Kirby's Fourth World by John Byrne with the Walt Simonson cover. So I double dipped, but it's still good because there's a Tale of the New Gods. These are a bunch of short stories, and they are in trade. These were backup features where they had Frank Miller come on, Jim Lee, John Paul Leon. This one is Walt Simonson. Little stories if you're really into these guys and stuff, doing some New God stuff. So that's all right. And then this may not do anything for you, and that's okay. But Legion 89. This came out of Invasion, the Invasion crossover at DC. But up in space, Keith Giffen was just nailing it with James DeMantis and Adam Hughes and Kevin Maguire and Bart Sears and all these people doing Justice League books. But Keith Giffen really made his name, in my opinion, with Paul Levitz on the Legion of Superheroes with the Darkness Saga, where Darkseid popped up against him, the Great Darkness Saga, and all the stuff. And he kind of returned to the Legion, but he did it in modern times at the time. So every year they would add the number of the year there on the book, so you would know this was not a future Legion story, Legion of Superheroes. This is a Legion book in modern day. They brought in Lobos, all the sci-fi characters out in space. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I think the first 2 years of this book, 89, 90, and going into 91 a little bit, are solid reads. It's a really underrated book. It was just a solid comic book. Let me make that clear. It's a comic book. Then they had Tom Peyer come on. Brett Kitson, the artist, actually ended up writing a few episodes. Mark Waid came on this right when he was really making his name as a writer, even though he'd been around forever. He was doing... I got this signed by him right here. Flash Year 1. I think this was 94. Oh, excuse me, early 92. He came on the Flash and returned it to it, and there's Impulse number 1 signed by him. I also had the first appearance of Impulse, Flash 94, I think, signed by him. But anyway, I just happened to have that there. But anyway, he came on and he played around with it and stuff. But the Keith Giffen, Alan Grant years are solid. There's some brutal stuff in that when it finally happened. Slow burns, a little humor, a little bit of everything. So these later issues, I'm just going ahead and collecting the entire run. I think I only need 3 issues now. But yeah, I'll read the entire run when I get them, because I'm not expecting them to be as gold as those first few years. And they had ties to the Legion of Superheroes. You find out where R.J. Brand really came from, and he is the guy that ended up being Chameleon Boy's dad and the richest man in the universe who funds the Legion of Superheroes. And for any of you guys that have been around for a while, maybe you can explain this one to me. This book actually books for very little. Okay, it's Spy Boy number 1 through Dark Horse. I don't even remember what year it is, but it's definitely the 90s. And Peter David came out and did Spy Boy. This book was hot during the 90s. and it's still kind of hard to find in bins around here. So when I saw one, I kind of just passed it up, put it to the side. And I went, I never see that. I think I've seen some later issues. But whatever this was by Peter David, Spy Boy was hot for a little bit. I don't know if there was rumblings of a TV show or a movie or whatever it is. So I'm kind of reaching out to you guys. If you remember Spy Boy, if you know why this was hot for half a minute there, I actually looked this up on eBay, and sets of Spy Boy actually go for a little bit of money. And I'm not doing the spec thing here. That's just what I saw 3 days ago on eBay. Okay. I don't remember what they were for, but they were a little bit pricey and stuff, right? But I didn't see a number one by itself. So I don't know. There were sets of them, comic book lots of them. But apparently this still has a fan following for some reason. And there's Hellboy Jr. And I'm really going to have to find this cover because you guys know I love wizards. I've actually, got a print of this. But tell me that doesn't look like the cover for Wizards with this Hellboy Jr. I want this. That's what's so funny. I found Spy Boy #1 by Peter David. I'm a Peter David fan. When I floated this over, I'm like, I want this. This is what I want. That's how you found good books back in the day. Word of mouth from your buddies, meeting people at comic conventions once or twice a year, hanging out in the comic book shop, and then seeing advertisements and stuff, right? That's how you found the stuff back in the day. Oh, yeah, and Wizard, maybe some previews and stuff, right? So, we've had people pop in here, and I'm glad y'all are popped in here. I'm going to be, like I said, it's crappy weather outside, so I probably won't do a show in the morning. I'll probably go into work for a little bit. I usually do my Sunday show. Thumbs up, subscribe, let people know we're there, and go ahead and share this on some kind of social media. Let them know we're here. Let them know there's people that bitch about comics in moderation and still talk about comics in general, and that we're all here and stuff, right? Everything's in moderation. What we got here? Great fan of Giffen. Little interest in the Legion of Superheroes, though. There's some good stuff. But if you're not interested, you're not interested. Woodward's here. What's up, brother? I saw that tag you put me in on Instagram. I commented. See, Woodward put up his 4-issue miniseries of Justice League versus Avengers with 2 extra little incentives in there, signed by Busick and Perez, which I thought was fantastic. Perez goes on to the Rebel series. The Gray Man knows what the Legion. Yeah, ended up with around the 0 hour. I think they ended up going to Rebels. Yep. I haven't braved myself. I think I have Rebels #0, but I don't know. Love those Fourth World books with the Tales of the New Gods backup. Yeah, there was, like I said, there was some good stuff that was coming out. You just got to dig with it a little bit. Gray Man, right on the Legion, is one of my favorite series ever. A lot of good stuff in there. Like I said, it's a solid comic book. It's got A stories, B stories, guest stars, pulls. It's just good stuff, man. Good stuff. All right, I think that's it, guys. We made it a little bit over an hour, and I got stuff to do today. So we'll see if the weather is better. Like I said, we got crappy wet snow outside after having a beautiful week. The weekend hits and we get this stuff, right? So everybody be excellent to each other. Thanks for popping in, and later.